Has Nvidia tricked us into thinking $1,600 is a good deal for a GPU? I've talked about this a couple of times, and I'm glad to see some other people are starting to kind of take notice of that. The RTX 4090, it's obviously a very expensive graphics card. $1,600 retail price, and that's before you get add-in board partner cards or any kind of retail markups or dealer markups for unavailability and, market price adjustments and things like that. $1,600 is a lot of money. I don't care what product it is. That's not an impulse purchase for most people. Especially considering $1,600 can buy you a pretty trick gaming PC on its own. So what's the justification that Nvidia has for a $1,600 asking price on their flagship card?
It's an interesting point, but I don't think that it's one that's just isolated to graphics cards. Like, this is kind of a thing that we're seeing across the board in a lot of places right now.
Yes.
A lot of markets. It's sort of similar. I wonder if how they can say, well, there's inflation, and so now you have to spend $7 for a gallon of milk. And it's like, hello, that's not reasonable. And they're like, well, this is the normal price now. You've been paying it for 2 years. It's like,
yeah. So if we look back, I've actually made this argument a number of times, and Nvidia knows exactly what they are doing. They are manipulating and obfuscating the actual price of their own products. And they're kind of starting to take Apple's approach with things, if I'm being honest, as far as their pricing tiers go. Is back in the GTX 500 days, in the Fermi days, add-in board partners had a lot of freedom in what they wanted to do with the GPU dies they were given. And so NVIDIA would say, here's an F106, here's an F104, and here's an F102. These are our 3 tiers of GPUs that we're selling. We've got a couple different binned versions, but here's what we're selling. Here's the cards that you have to label these as if you're using a particular binned chip. So a GF104 would be an RTX. Good Lord, I can't adjust back anymore. Would be a GTX 470 or 570, for example. And so those were really the only limitations. And they said, we have to approve reference designs. And so if you have a board that you want to do, we need to make sure that it's going to work. And as long as it works, we're good. You could add more memory to things as an add-in board partner. You could do different power delivery solutions. You could put 2 chips on the same board. You could overclock the bejesus out of it. You could do a lot of different things. So we get things like the Asus Mars Fermi cards and kind of a graphics card heyday. But even back then, the graphics card, like the top-end graphics card, a GTX 580, I want to say sold for right around $400, like their top of the line card. And for most of the late 2000s, early aughts, that was the top end tier of graphics cards, was right around $400 to $500. With the GTX 1080 all the way in 2017 being a $500 card for a flagship card. Now, NVIDIA's always had some Halo products. They've always had something like the GTX 690, which was dual 680s on a single board. That was a $1,000 card. They've had their TI series of graphics cards. They've had the 780 Ti and then the Titans even beyond that. And those have been almost always nearly $1,000 graphics cards or 800 or so. But they were always positioned as a Halo product with the markup to go with it. So yeah, you can buy the Audi R8, or can I interest you in a Lamborghini Huracan? Now, they might be the same platform and they might be the same engine, but the Huracan's tuned better. And that's always been kind of what it is, where one is $120,000 and the other is $250,000. Yeah, you're going to pay double the price for 10% more performance. It's the way of the world. But in the last couple of generations of graphics cards, you've got Turing, Ampere, and now Lovelace. They've done an interesting thing, and they've been staggering their tiers up. Where the 80 series used to be their flagship card. Best of the best. It's not $500 anymore. It's now $800. And actually, as of the 4080, it's $1,200 for an 80 series card. They've been inflating the value of their own tiers of products. So, what do you get for $500 right now? I don't think Nvidia makes a $500 graphics card right now, if I'm being honest. I know they do, but...
I mean, and this is the big problem. Like, they might have seen what people were willing to pay to scalpers, and now that they're implementing a back tax in a way of like, how far can we push the consumer?
Yeah.
And that's what every industry is doing right now. Well, they've been paying it. How far can we push the consumer? What is the limit that they're willing to pay? And we'll stop right before there.
Yep. Right. They're also doing this interesting thing with the tiering of their current generation products. And they've been doing this for the last couple of years. They're trying to make their... So you've got your Halo product. You've got your RTX 3090, right? $1,500 graphics card. You put that out there, and you put your second tier card, your RTX 3080, in a position where it looks like you'd be stupid not to just upgrade. You price the 3080 at $1,100, and you give it less than half of the memory. You give it 10 gigs of RAM instead of 24. You have the memory bandwidth. You do a couple of other things to it where you're like, if I'm already up to 1,100, I might as well spend 15. And that's a real train of thought that a lot of people get on, especially when you get the upgrade bug for your system. You're like, well, if I'm going to spend $250 for a new motherboard, I might as well just get the top-end CPU to go with it, because while I'm here, Nvidia is intentionally positioning their cards to upsell you and make you think the higher tier is a better value than it actually is. Look at the reviews for the RTX 4080. It's nothing but... It's a great card. It's overpriced, and it's nowhere near the value return or the frame per dollar that you get out of the 4090. That is very much intentional from Nvidia. And it's kind of marketing 101, and I go back to Apple, because Apple's been doing this since Steve Jobs came back to Apple, when they consolidated their product lines and they said, we're going to do a couple of things right, and then we're going to build our business from there. What did they do with the original iMacs that were, $1,000 desktop PCs? They sold them with very basic specs, with an Apple G3 processor, 233 megahertz for $1,000, and what, 64 megs of RAM or something like that. And then they offered upgrade tiers. And you could upgrade all the way to like a 450 megahertz G3. So twice as fast as the entry-level iMac. And 256 megabytes of RAM. And an 40 gigabyte hard drive instead of an 8 gigabyte hard drive. And it's kind of the same thing of like, well, while I'm here, I might as well just get the best of this machine, because it's not like I can upgrade it myself later on. And before you know it, you're spending $1,600 on what was advertised to be a $1,000 PC, but you're the one who checked the boxes to upgrade. They've been doing this with Macs, like I said, for 25 years now. It's a very slippery slope when you get onto the MacBook Pro thing and you go like, well, the base model's only $1,100, but God, it only has 8 gigs of RAM in 2022? Are you kidding me? I'm going to get 16. If I'm going to spend the extra $150 to get 16 gigs of RAM, I might as well double my storage while I'm at it. And the 10 gig network port on the Mac Mini looks pretty enticing, like 100 extra bucks. Who knows? I might need 10 gig one day. All of a sudden, you're spending $1,400 for a Mac Mini or $1,700 on a MacBook. when you walked in going, you know what, I want a Mac and I'm going to spend $1,000.
Yeah.
This is the game that Nvidia's playing. They're inflating their own prices by making the upgrades look like a better value than the base price.
And you see how well it works, though, when how many consumers, we're out there putting a video, it says this is a $1,000 gaming PC build, and we're pricing everything out, very diligently staying under $1,000. What sacrifices do we have to make to get performance for that cost? And somebody will be like, well, I don't understand why I didn't just pay the extra $120 and get this graphics card. It's like, did you miss the exercise, my friend? I know that it's just $120, which to people like you and I might not be that much. But I've been in the position where $120 extra dollars is not a sacrifice that I can make just to get a little bit more performance.
Right.
If I have $1,000, I have $1,000.
Reviewers going, you'd be stupid to buy an RTX 4080 if you're considering spending that much money. Just go buy the 4090. It's a $400 markup.
Well, if he's not doing it, then he's an idiot. He's leaving performance on the table for a marginal markup.
Every build has a sacrifice. Every build has a bottleneck. It's just not the bottleneck you expect. If I build a PC with a 1660 Super and an i5, of course it's not going to run as fast as my 3090 with a 13900K because they're slower parts. That's a bottleneck. Like, there's always something you can upgrade. There's always something you can do better. There's always a different thing that you're concerned with in your build, whether it's acoustics, whether it's heat, whether it's whatever else. Maybe I don't want a system that draws 800 watts from the wall, and I just want to play games, and I'm okay with running at medium settings at 4K or 1440p or 1080p. Guess what? Those are sacrifices that I've chosen in my build to be able to afford the build and be comfortable while playing. We as a people have been tricked into buying more expensive things.